Welcome to the Evergent podcast, presenting the future of media and entertainment.
So let's start with the big picture. As we begin to move through 2026, I feel that the streaming landscape is continuing to shift from growth at all costs to more profitability through precision. We're seeing a little bit of a convergence crisis right now, where consumers are increasingly hesitant to manage dozens of siloed subscriptions. Instead, I think that they're demanding really a unified, high-value experience. From Evergent's perspective, there's a couple of story points. We're seeing a real rise in hybrid monetization. I think we saw that by 2026, over 81% of platforms are going to have adopted some kind of hybrid model, blending SVOD, AVOD, TVOD, to really maximize that revenue per user. I think that we're also seeing companies lean more towards global scaling. We're seeing a lot of growth in regions such as APAC, which, as a region, it's predicted to reach $54 billion in OTT revenue by the end of this year. And finally, there's the expectation of true personalization. I think that the topic of AI-driven personalization, it's no longer seen as a nice to have. It's now considered the industry standard, with 86% of users intending to keep or even expand their subscriptions if the value and the discovery experience remains high enough. So again, just in general, I am beginning to see the shift more towards this mixed monetization, combining independent revenue streams to maximize every single customer touch point. Yeah, I mean, Kevin or Tom, considering these movements, what are the primary trends that you both foresee dominating the media and digital service ecosystem through the rest of the year? And furthermore, how are consumer expectations evolving in terms of content value and discovery?
I mean, you're completely right. So what we see in the last few years, and we're going to see this most likely for this year as well, is actually three areas to help the user discover content more easily. And first of all, a need for personalization. Personalization used to be a nice to have in a service, but now users expect it because of, the different services coming in like Netflix and Disney Plus and the others. So it's no longer a nice to have. And also, as for example, the State of Play 2025 report from Gracenote said that more than 45% of streaming viewers say that the saturation of streaming services and also content is overwhelming for them. So it means when you can do personalization right, and I think we're far from it from the mainstream providers, but if you do it right, I think you can really separate yourself out of the competition. The second thing is aggregation or unified user experiences. So, this used to be the play of the typical telcos and pay TV service providers, but with more, let's say, fragmentation of content, getting more and more difficult. But we see a shift moving a little bit into the other direction, driven by two main reasons. One is obviously consolidation. We all know the BD saga going on at the moment. And you also see other consolidations going on at the moment in the market, where basically content is converging now into single services. But the other thing as well is the willingness, or the start of the willingness from content owners to share their content also on other platforms. So what used to be a few years ago, from a completely aggregated point of view, let's say broadcast TV, for example, into a completely fragmented situation with every content owner launching their own consumer services, is now coming back a little bit more towards a more aggregated view. So we see this, for example, in UK, ITV sharing their content on Amazon Prime Video. Also, Sky just recently announced that they will be also adding, in addition to the Netflix package, also Disney Plus and also HBO content to their subscribers in the Sky packages too. So I think all of these are the right noises, I would say, going into the right direction for obviously better aggregation, better discoverability, and users, leaving less to search and more to watch. So basically putting them first instead of content first.
It's interesting because I agree with a lot of the trends that you mentioned, but from the AWS point of view, we see them slightly differently, especially with my role where I go across media, entertainment, games, and sports, which is a slightly wider point of view. So coming back on the first topic around the diversification of the monetization models, this is part of breaking some of the silos for revenue, but also how audiences and consumers are watching. And I think you mentioned that some, say, broadcasters are trying to work with other streamers to have different distribution platforms. I think one of the big disruptors that is causing that is the viewing patterns, and especially the younger audiences' viewing patterns. I
Yeah.
mean, if you look at Gen Z, for example, over 58% of Gen Z viewers watch more video on social media than on television or streaming platforms. And that is forcing all the content producers, content distributors to rethink in a much wider sense the way that they are distributing their content and they're engaging with their audiences, some that are on their platform, some that are not on the platform or through a different platform. And so then you mentioned how do you then engage with these audiences that are more fragmented and where you have touch points that might be through a wider variety of platforms. And that's where smart personalization and even hyper personalization is starting to become a kind of a new baseline. And as a content provider, you have to think of your viewership and your audience across all of these platforms and serve them personalized content the way they watch it, the way they want to watch it, at the time they want it, on the platform that they want it, and really think of a omni-channel strategy to engage them, using social media to bring younger audiences to your paying platform or to a monetizable platform through AVOD or through fast channels. So there's two competing forces here: the willingness of simplicity for the users and not having 50 different subscriptions, but at the same time, the habits of wanting to see different content from different sources at different times on different platforms. So that's something that our customers have to grapple with.
I think there's a real fine balance across these services and trying to find that level of flexibility, but then also, being able to offer packages that allow these consumers to engage on their own terms, right? Like there's so many choices out there for these viewers, but a lot of the services still today offer your standard packages, whether that's monthly or yearly. And then you've got your traditional PVOD approach there. But I think that we need to be looking into, or some services need to be looking into diversifying that a little bit more, realizing that people might want to have 3 months of access or, a little bit more if they want to be able to pause their subscriptions while they go on vacation. So I think it's finding a line between everything that you're both saying there as well. But yeah, please continue, Kevin.
One of the other things that we are observing with the thousands of customers we have across the world that are serving their audiences through AWS platforms is that there's also a technology convergence, a traditional media, streaming, telco, but also the usage of data, which we'll talk about a lot today, I'm assuming, but also cloud to be able to operate distributed at scale and leveraging, generative AI or some of the native media services that are available on a platform like AWS. Because the media distributions, the distributors, the operators, they need to be able to experiment at speed, try new formats, try new ways of engaging their audience. And that technology, which is merging cloud, IT, traditional video broadcast streaming capabilities, is really also changing the way our customers are thinking about engaging their audiences with more personalized content, products, ways of distribution.
Yeah, it's a really valid point, actually, and some that's really relevant to a case that we had. There's these customers that really want the ability to experiment with these go-to-market approaches. We had a really large sports organization working with us, and they wanted to experiment with a 10-minute pass for a match where a user would come on, they would subscribe really quickly, frictionless experience, and they'd be on there for the last 10 minutes, the first 10 minutes of a game. Turns out it wasn't the approach that they wanted. I don't think the results were there to justify this. So we ended up rolling it back, but it's all about that experimentation, Kevin, that you're talking about. Some things are going to work, some things aren't going to work. But as an industry and the position that we're in, I think we need to think about flexibility. We need to think about the way of changing the status quo that we've got right now.
Yeah, and then maybe let me just quickly add to what just Kevin said before, I think, which is super important, is what Kevin more or less pointed out is that in quite a long time now, even content production is moving towards the user's needs, right? So as you just said before, right, they need to change the way to produce content based on the different generations, for example, they would like to address, which again, then I think, and we're going to discuss this later on a little bit more probably anyways, which will also change monetization. And I talk about not only content monetization, but also, for example, ad monetization, right? What we see as well is the shift also away from, the traditional 30-second spot into, okay, how can I make it more immersive? And I think Amazon Prime has started, very well. I just watched the game, yesterday on Amazon Prime, where you can now also immediately put something into your basket when you see an ad you like, for example. So immersive one thing, but then also I think where we're still lagging behind a little bit in that sense is to get the right, the right inventory in ads as well, to make those kind of experiences. So I think this is another shift we will see together with kind of, data aggregation, monetization, and user-centric content production, which I think will make a huge shift in the next year and years to come.
Completely agree.